And I got into this thing where I actually enjoy helping people build stuff, much more so than actually building stuff myself.
But what inspired you to pursue this career,
Not all the smart people are going to work for you. I've always believed that code is truth. Ultimately, I believe where DevRel is headed is that.
What do you see as the next big trend in developer relations and community building?
To be great at developer relations, I think you need to be deep. I learned very early on that what I have to say is less interesting. It's more important that what they want to hear. Mm-hmm. Staying as technical as you can for as long as you can will benefit you greatly.
Today I'm joined by Matt Thompson, who is the Director of Developer Adoption at Google Cloud. I want to learn a little bit more about where developer relations is headed and kind of your career trajectory, how you got into DevRel, right? You're joined here by Matt. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I deeply appreciate it. I don't want to make this sound like an ancient history lesson, so we won't go there. I've been doing this a long time. I'll say that Google Cloud, done this function for a couple other companies. I've also run engineering, so I've built product before. And as a matter of fact, probably the best way to introduce me is to talk about the story of how I got here. Not
Sure.
here, but into these kind of roles. My first job out of university was building product, and I really enjoyed it. And after about 6 months, my boss came to me and said, "Hey, you disappear every afternoon. Where are you? Because you're not clearly in your office coding, so what are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I like to learn from other people. So before lunch, I do what I'm supposed to do. After lunch, I wander down the hall and talk to other people."
Nice.
And he said, "Well, that's cool and that's great. However, you're supposed to be coding after lunch too." And I said, "Yeah, but it's so much more interesting learning from other people." And so, long story short, I actually was more interested in what they were building than what I was building. I got into this thing where I actually enjoy helping people build stuff, much more so than actually building stuff myself. And that, it took me a couple years after that to kind of figure out that I'm actually better at helping other people than doing it myself. And that was kind of a long and windy road that led me to DevRel.
Nice, yeah. It seems like a perfect, it's kind of the definition of developer relations is helping developer communities and developers show them how to build stuff with your technology.
I fully agree, although my manager didn't see it that way.
Yeah. Yeah. The salary that you were being paid was for different things. Yeah, right. I'm kind of guessing I already have the answer from the great introduction that you gave, but what inspired you to pursue this career,
Actually, so there is actually a point, and again, I'll try to stay away from the ancient history lessons.
Yep.
So Java was a big moment when Java was released to the world. It's a big moment in my life. I had come back to Sun specifically to help launch Java to the world. From a developer relations perspective, there was no developer relations for Java. I ended up leading that very first team. So we, for everybody in the audience that had to take Java in school, I apologize. Yeah, we had something to do with that. But the idea is actually based on a really simple thing. If we could get developers to use a technology or to use a platform or runtime ahead of when we actually needed them to, then we win. And we meaning the community and everybody else. If we wait until an application or a workload is needed, we're late. Yeah. And so the idea is, could we go out and proactively get devs excited, see the opportunities, take advantage of the new capabilities that we're releasing into the world? And that was really the beginning of it. And before that moment, I was only building products. Yeah. And after that moment, I've done mostly this.
Nice. What was the most rewarding part of it? I know, I have an idea about it, but I'll let you answer that.
So there's a philosophy that was espoused to me years ago by somebody much smarter than I was. Not all the smart people are going to work for you. Meaning any company. And at Google, we believe we have a lot of smart people, as do a lot of companies. The idea is you have to have a strategy for innovation happening elsewhere. And so think about that. Innovation happening elsewhere. There are a ton of smart people all over the world, not going to be working for you. How do you enable them to do great things on your platform? And so one of the things that's been true throughout my career, and one of the things that I've always believed in, is that platforms by definition need external developer communities. If you don't have external developer community, you're not a platform. You may call yourself a platform, you're not. The other thing is, the more developers you bring, it's kind of like the node thing on, with networking. Yep. More value in the network, the more nodes that are created. So the idea is the more people innovating on a platform, the more valuable the platform is. I wouldn't say that I woke up with that idea one day. It was more after a couple of years of learning about this, that we can make the argument that a developer in New York working for a large financial company may be wildly valuable. But there might be 10 developers in South Africa equally valuable for what they are going to create. You cannot predict where innovation is going to happen. Lots of companies try, lots of companies build incubators, lots of companies do those things. It's all awesome. The reality is, and Google is, Google's history is, two PhD students sat down and said, hey, let's go redefine how people find stuff on the internet. I don't think anybody predicted that, right? And there certainly were a lot of companies in existence that were looking at it a different way. So I firmly believe that you need to have a strategy for innovation happening elsewhere, and that elsewhere can be anywhere. Not all those people are going to work for you, so find a way to enable everybody else as well.
That's clever. That's really good. That's really good.
I fell into it, but yeah, sure.
Awesome. As a leader in developer relations, what do you think are the key factors tying into what you just said to build a strong community? It doesn't have to be physically isolated somewhere, as you said, but what are the key factors?
So I think it's a really interesting question. So I'm gonna show bias, and everybody has bias, right? Yeah. So I've always believed that code is truth. So whatever we write, whatever we demo, whatever we build, the reality is that if we're willing to show the code that led to that, either immediately or in sometime in the future, you're providing truth to what you've done, and you've given people a roadmap for how they can do it too, and build on top of what you've done. I'm very much a believer in building on the shoulders of those who've come before you, right? I believe, and one of the big things that developer relations everywhere deals with is, are you technical marketing or are you engineering?
Yep.
Everywhere I've been, developer relations has been an engineering function. I firmly believe that has to be the case. There may be technical marketing components and aspects to it. We partner with our marketing organization extremely well, but we sit in engineering. We actually sit with the product teams, and there's advantages to that, there are disadvantages to that, but it allows us to be deeply technical. So to answer your question, to be great at developer relations, I think you need to be deeply technical. As a matter of fact, we say we're product adjacent people.
Yeah.
We are engineers. I hire engineers, and there are other roles in there as well. I'm kind of getting away from your question, but that's a philosophy that I've kind of espoused from the beginning.
No, I get that. So to enable developers, you need to be developers yourself first.
Exactly right.
Nice.
Actually, Google has and I'm going to say Google has this, but lots of people use this line, we're developer zero for all the products for the platform and everything else. And I think that's a well understood kind of theme in the space now.
I'm going to quote that, yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. Awesome. You have been doing this for a while, right? And,
yes, that is true.
But how, and you have given your take on, there's some bias, but I agree with that we're product adjacent, we're engineers first. But how do you balance advocating for developers, but then also aligning with company objectives and product objectives, right?
It's a great question. So we use terms like evangelism, which is outbound, and advocacy, which tends to be a little more inbound. I run an organization in Google Cloud that everybody in the organization thinks of themselves as an advocate. It's outbound and inbound. At other companies, I actually carried an evangelism title, which suggests that it's all outbound. That was never the case. It was inbound as well. But that balance is really critical. Striking that balance is hard. One of the best practices that we've leaned into over the last couple of years here is we have a prioritized list of critical products for our platform, so for Google Cloud.
Okay.
That doesn't mean we don't help with other products, because I think there are 200 plus products in Google Cloud today. We can't possibly, you give me the biggest team in the world, we wouldn't be able to cover all 200. So there are products that are priorities for us, and we do code labs, and we do events, and we do blogs, and we do sample code, and all this great stuff for those things. There are others that are maybe, call it tier 1.5, where maybe during launches we'll do things, but maybe not as much otherwise. It is a balance. There is the inbound and outbound, and that tension is real. As a matter of fact, I do talk to a lot of other DevRel leaders. I was actually having a conversation with a DevRel leader for one of the other hyperscalers just the other day. That balance between product and what developers in the ecosystem want is real. And if you're in a role like this and you don't feel that, there's something wrong.
Okay.
It's a natural tension. You should feel that.
I'm guessing, since you shared there are few critical services, I'm a GD in GCP, so I know there are so many services that there are a few that I don't know. Is there a reevaluation in that priority or the criticality?
It's a great question. The answer is there has to be, obviously, right? So the process we use, which we've come to after kind of looking at the pace of change, for us in GCP, we look at it quarterly. So we're literally looking at it every 3 months. That doesn't mean the entire prioritized list changes every 3 months, because that would be hard. But we do tend to flip in new products, new services on a 3-month basis. And a great example of this is ADK, the Agent Developer Kit, wasn't even really on anybody's radar 3 months ago, and now it sits near the top of our list.
Do you see that shrinking down the quarterly because of the advancements we are making?
Yeah, it's interesting that you asked that. Just going on the last 2 quarters, the pressure we see is not shrinking it down; it's actually adding too much, because all the products are going through a revolutionary change. One of the things that we talk about for Google Cloud, and again, I know this is not a Google Cloud discussion necessarily, but one of the things we talk about at Google Cloud is we're actually building intelligence into the platform. And so if you look across the product portfolio, we're adding AI capabilities into every product. That immediately leads product leaders to, it should be in the top of your priority list, because all this new stuff's coming. We do flex a little bit around that, especially around launches and things. Like you can imagine our data cloud space might not be the thing moving fastest, but with everything becoming vectorized and everything adding intelligence into it, and then allowing us to manage it through kind of an intelligence built into the platform, that's now at the top of our list. I'm not sure I could have predicted that a year ago.
Definitely. I can relate to that because I've been using BigQuery, but it was a constant.
Yeah.
And then now you can use BigQuery for RAG purposes. And I'm like, it's hot again now.
It's the perfect example. And you can go down the list from BigQuery to, to our SQL products, to everything else, and they're all sitting in there. And I'm going to be careful, I'm going to say this on tape, and I probably shouldn't, but Spanner is the only thing we haven't seen morph tremendously, and even it is changing.
Yeah, so definitely. I'll shift a little bit now.
Sure.
Because I only have limited time with you. Would love to have a 24-hour podcast. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, only if you bring pizza.
What do you see as the next big trend in developer relations and community building?
Yeah. So let's separate out the two, because I actually think there's and I'm going to finish with the community building piece. That's a piece I care about deeply. And we'll get very philosophical there in a second. One of the things that we're experimenting with is personalization. And the way to think about this, I tend to think of polar extremes, and then we're going to end up somewhere in the middle. So the polar extreme that represents kind of where we are today is we're going to handwrite all our sample code. And remember, so for 200 services or products at Google Cloud, sample code against any of those that have an API or a developer interface means that we're writing thousands of samples, if not actually tens of thousands of samples. So assume that's all hand done for the most part today. Some of it's generated through intelligent use of an API, et cetera. But just assume most of that is kind of handwritten stuff. You then look at, introduction pages in our documentation for using that API. And then you could also then say, if it's cross-referenced in a larger sample, something that we might show on stage, that information is also there, as well as if it's open source, there'll be a community focus on that. Well, the personalized view of that would be a developer would come to, let's say, the Google Cloud website and say, I want to learn more about X, and X could be any number of things. So on one hand, we can generate all that by hand, and it's static, and we're a search company, and we know how to search for things, that's all good, or index things. The opposite end of that is we generate it all on the fly. In a world where you want the absolute personalized answer to what you're looking for, we could, through an LLM, generate the docs, generate the sample, probably generate the larger application that we could use on stage. And if there's a community effort, we're not going to generate that on the fly, but at least be able to point people to that it's there. As we move towards that, I don't think we're going to go all the way there. I don't think the world is turning into on-the-fly generation of developer resources from scratch. I do think there will be derivations of that. And so one of the examples that we experimented with a year ago was this notion of, is there a getting started application in a space that's interesting to you that shows off the use of APIs? We statically created about a dozen of those. And some of them did extremely well, some of them were never seen. So one of the things we learned from that is generating those using APIs that the developer asks about, using a schema that we may define ahead of time is actually an interesting way to go. So that might be something you're going to see us do. I'll get to the community side now, because I think that's the more interesting thing. You're not generating a community on the fly. Humans are not fungible that quickly, nor should they be. Ultimately, I believe where DevRel is headed is that we will have content and capability for developers that we can generate almost instantaneously. But as a human being, I actually think the connections we make with people end up being the thing that ends up being durable. Our engagement in communities, our engagement both in open source communities, for the ones we care about, as well as local communities. So something else that I'll say publicly, and you can definitely quote me on this, is that community is hyper-local. I've always believed that. And what that means is that the user group in Bangalore, the user group in Johannesburg, the user group in Singapore is going to be different than the user group in San Francisco.
Definitely.
It's going to be run by different people. There are going to be different types of agendas. They can share content. They can share how they do things. But the energy of a community is because of the people, nothing else.
Yep.
We can generate all the things that are going to help devs learn something. You can't generate community. That's an investment. And that's takes, I'll say, months to build, and you can destroy it in a day simply by doing something that's going to piss off your community. So I think DevRel, from that perspective, we're actually going to see even more investment in community enablement. We certainly at Google Cloud have done this through the GE program, which you're familiar with, and we're doubling down on that. We believe that not just amplification, because we'd love for you to, like this conversation,
Yep.
I hope the whole world watches it. Don't know what they're going to get out of it, but I hope everybody watches it. But your ideas, your thoughts, along with all the other GDs out there, are really interesting to us. And that helps us, even when it's not always positive, helps us understand how people are thinking. So I'll stop there. To me, there's stuff we can do that's automated, and then the community part of it, I think, will be an even bigger investment.
100%. I think I resonate a lot with what you said about communities being hyperlocal, because being someone who recently moved from the Waterloo, Kitchener area to Dallas now, I had a really good GDG club there. And, I've been doing that for 3 years in other communities where I've been giving talks. There's a culture aspect to it. And now I have to do that all again in Dallas, find new meetups that I can be part of and build connections with other developers. So I 100% agree with that. I want to go back to what you said about personalized content, because I am really intrigued by education in general, but also educating developers and enabling them, right?
Yep.
Or are we going towards a place where, and this is a vision, right? That you go into Google Docs or Google Cloud Docs, right? And you're like, oh, I'm creating this, event-driven application, generate personalized docs for me. Is that what you were referring to?
Probably something like that. I do think it, because you hit on learning. I think learning is a really important thing. So I'm the old guy in the room, always the old guy in the room, and that's okay. We know that people learn differently.
Yes.
Right?
100%.
And we were talking a little bit earlier. So I run our team runs one of the largest YouTube technical channels in the world. Hundreds of thousands of people have subscribed to that. Which is fantastic. Love it. It's awesome. When we ask, what do you learn from that? Some people go to the pure entertainment side, and that's great. YouTube is a great entertainment platform. From a learning platform standpoint, then you get into long form, short form, shorts, et cetera. And people do learn differently. And we've seen that, people under the age of 32, for example, tend to learn more in video form. I've got 2 kids. My daughter spends all day on YouTube, as far as I can tell. I'm surprised she's graduating. I'm kidding. If she ever watches this, I was kidding. But she learns from YouTube. I don't learn a lot when I watch YouTube. I get a lot of awareness. There are a lot of things that interest me that I want to go dive deeper in. I tend to learn through long form. And so I will spend time. I want to get to the code as fast as I can, read a whole bunch of stuff around. I also value other people's opinions. So once I get into a topic, then I'm going to go look for 5 people saying really negative things about it, and then probably 3 or 4 people saying something really positive, and then try to balance that and figure out where I think I sit on this. So the learning component of this, where I think we're headed, is, it's kind of a throwaway line, a hackneyed line that meet developers where they are, right? So certainly from a geography perspective, I already said that community is hyperlocal. Developers learn differently, so I think we're moving to a world where similar content or a similar learning journey can be started, and then you can take whatever off-ramp you want to other platforms to learn about. I still get back to, because I'm the old guy, I still believe that code is truth. So to me, the faster I can get to the code, the more likely I'm going to learn more quickly.
I think I'm in the middle, where I do like YouTube videos, long-form YouTube videos. But also I sometimes go back to certain technical books. I'm right in the middle. I'm not fully reliant on YouTube videos, but I'm also not the one who can say, I can only read from books, and that's how I learn. So yeah, everyone learns differently.
Yeah.
So looking back, at your career, what's one piece of advice you wish you had received when you first started, specifically in developer relations?
Yeah. So I think nobody told me that this is going to be hard. So one of the beautiful things about people, and one of the beautiful things about developers specifically, and I'm going to use a story about Next, the most recent conference we had. One of the things that we did this year is we tried to make Next a better, we'll call it home, but a better spot for developers. So there was more things for developers to do on the show floor. We had a great community lounge. We had our GDG lounge. It was awesome. Mixed in with stuff for everybody else, right? There are lots of different types. We had partners and customers, everything else there. And one of the pieces of feedback that we got was, as a developer, I don't know that I had a home. I had lots of things I could go do. And I use that because internally I often say, as an audience type, developers are unique. It's one of the few roles that you can have where you will always need to learn. Like you should never feel comfortable with what you know. But on the other hand, you also get to have a really strong opinion. Like there could be a technology sweeping the world, and you could go, yeah, not good enough, and I'll tell you why. Here are my reasons. I love that. And so the thing that I learned was, this job is hard because ultimately you're trying to get developers to try things, predict a little bit ahead of time where they're going to run into trouble, and provide that help before they get there, so that they can, when they find it, because you can't tell them, by the way, 3 days from now you're going to run into this issue, and you're going to use this, right? But you can make it easy for them to find. And so we kind of classify these things as user journeys or developer journeys. And what I'm constantly astounded by is we could write down for one new service, we could write down 10 user journeys that we think developers are going to go through. And within the first day, the 11th one will be found. And so somebody could have told me, hey, this is going to be a lot more difficult than you think. I wouldn't have believed him at the time, but it's certainly true. And it's actually, this goes back to the innovation happens elsewhere. It's that 11th journey that probably leads to something interesting, if not the 11th, the 12th, the 13th, or whatever. I really do believe letting 1,000 flowers bloom, because sitting in a room full of highly intelligent people building stuff is just the greatest thing to geek out on ever. So.
Definitely, 100%. Awesome. That's great advice. Yeah, So people who are trying to get into developer relations, there's a great advice about it's not all glamorous and easy. My next question was gonna be it's kind of similar. So like for someone aspiring to become not a developer relations engineer per se, but let's say for someone like me who has been in developer evangelist for 3 years, if I want to become a leader in developer relations, what skills and mindset do you think is necessary? You have already shared a lot of great insights that I have got an action plan to work on. But any more?
You asked, so I can give you some, but unsolicited, I will still give you ideas, and you should ignore most of them. But one of the things in this space that I have found to be really useful is you got to like people. I mean, like there's no developer relations function that's not a people function. I have worked with introverts. I have worked with extroverts. I get as much excitement speaking to 5,000 people as I do to one. That's hard. There are people, we've had people in our organization that are like, oh, I'm not doing that talk. There are less than 100 people. I'm like, yeah, I don't think you can say that. At least not in the team I'm running. You can't say that. So there's the notion of the value of the people that you're talking to, highly educated, highly innovative, even if I've given talks to what on the outside looks to be one of the most staid and boring type companies in the world, without naming any of them, but you can imagine industries that might not be at the leading edge. And yet when you sit down with them, you find out that they're even with all these constraints around them, they're being highly creative and innovative in how they're trying to bring solutions. So every developer that we run into deserves that kind of respect. So the first thing I would say is, respect the intelligence in whatever audience it is that you're doing. And the next piece is, kind of put yourself as part of that audience. What would you want to hear? We often find ourselves being excited about what we want to talk about. I learned very early on that what I have to say is less interesting. It's more important that what they want to hear. And then the last thing, which I say all the time, is staying as technical as you can for as long as you can will benefit you greatly in the career.
Definitely. Yeah, I have had instances where I've given like a talk to a single person. It was a workshop, and I just ended up sitting with them instead of being on the stage or whatever. But it reminds me that one of the lessons, I don't know who taught me this, was what if you were that person? How would you feel? So feeling respected, it's a mutual feeling. So put yourself in those developer shoes. So great tip there. This was great. We had an amazing conversation. I learned a lot about my future in developer relations, where we are headed as AI is advancing. Where the learnings are going to be, how developers will kind of use that, what Google Cloud is kind of trying, and also that communities are hyper-local, and some great insights from your career as well. So thank you for sitting down with me, Matt. Is there anything else that you would like to add towards the end of the video here?
So first, I've really enjoyed this. Thank you. You've allowed me to espouse some of the things that I've obviously spent a lot of time thinking during my career, and I love talking to people about this. For all those people out there innovating, one of the things I care about is we want to try to make that as easy as possible. I believe, as I said earlier, that a platform is only a platform if you get developers innovating on top of it. Our goal is to make every developer's life a little bit easier. We're building intelligence into the platform. We've got some amazing AI capabilities that we've rolled out, especially here at I/O and previously at Next. And so what I would say is the best way to kind of get tied into that, if you're not currently doing so, is the Google Developer Program. Come join. It's free. It's a great way to learn about amazing opportunities to engage both in the community and get access to some great content, and including some of the content my team builds. So I'm always happy when people kind of read our stuff as well. And with that, I think that's great. Thank you.
Awesome. So the links for the Google Developer Program will be in the description with everything else that was mentioned during this amazing conversation. So thank you. Thank you, Matt.
Awesome.
Yeah.